I just start with this, the today handles around, this is my handle, website, email if you want to reach out to me later on. So largely the talk is around, the conversational interfaces, what we are doing with Drupal onto it, and why you should worry about it, right? I think we start with why you should worry about it, and then go to that, how do you use Drupal or any content management or any content platform, right, to work with conversational interfaces, right? So, the Gartner says that by 2020, 85% of the relationship with an organization would not happen with a human, right? Google says that by 2020, 50% of the searches would be a voice-based search, which is right now about 20%, right? Now that's a big number, right? And if you look at the curve, if you look at all the ecosystem, it's actually going towards where the bots are getting cheaper. It's easy to your phone is now becoming a way to access Google the voice. Now I'll skip all this thing, which is more around to why the bot ecosystem should be looked at. But the point is that right now, any content management system or any websites you build, or any marketing sites you build, or any content platforms you build, are just not ready, right, for this world. What that means. Now we build content sites for web-based platform, right? That means high verbosity, content, right? That means very visual, screen-based. You can pretty much look at a 500 words article and scan it through and find out, okay, this is the line or the paragraph that I really want to look into. Not possible in the conversational world, right? Conversational world is very low verbosity, zero user interface, and a unidirectional flow, right? Now, one big thing that in the web-based world is the hyperlinks, right? You can click onto one place, go to another page, go to the third page, right? Which is a way to navigate this content and the information architecture, which is totally not possible in a conversational world. Now, how do you build an information architecture in a way that it's ready for the conversational architecture, right? So if you're building a content, if you're building a content page, if you're building a page, how does that page is ready for, for Alexa, for, other places, right? So, and that's where, the context become very important, right? One word which I picked from Preston actually, which is conversational legibility of content, right? When the content that you're building, is it conversation legible? Can listener understand this, right? Is that, and because if you're building a content right now, and if you're not thinking of it's a conversion legible or not, and building the content is so expensive, imagine all the rework you would have to do from 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line when the world becomes all voice based, if which the trend becomes in, right? I'll skip the part of how this bot work. It's very usual now. That somebody really want me to talk about this piece on how Alexa's work really. I see some faces which says yes. So you have a wake word which essentially launch invocations or the applications, right? Plan my trip here is an application, and then you have different utterances, right, which essentially are commands, right, which turns into commands, and you have variables which are called slot values, right? So in anything that you say to the to Alexa or Google, you have two main things, which is one utterance and then slot values, the variables, right? The utterances essentially turn into an intent, a function, if you will, right, from a programming point of view, and then slot value essentially turns into a variable. So you invoke a function, plan my trip intent, and puts in a value of a date, right, where you say, I need a vacation, I would like to take a trip. That particular utterance, invokes a function called plan my trip intent. Went a little fast, hope it's clear. If not, it's okay, good. Now, some examples, right? For example, if this is a live page which Preston again worked with Georgia Gov, right? Now this says that how long can I receive benefits? This is a live example for that page. Now, when we are building these pages, when building these FAQs, we tend to assume that the user knows that we are in the employment benefits page, right? So you make your question on saying that how long can I receive benefits? You don't say how long can I receive my employment benefits. But when you're using this same content over Alexa or Google Home or any voice-based, you have to have that context very well written. That's why every time you build a content in any place, Defining that context is very useful. Then the hyperlinks, right? This is a very usual hyperlink that you would have seen where it says, learn more about payments, right? Now imagine the same content being served on Alexa, where it says, learn more about payments, right? The user would be clueless because he can't click over the Alexa. That is why a better way of creating a content strategy is to, probably link, the words which are more contextual. In this case, receive payments. So if the same content is being served over web, a user can click on the receive payments and go to that link. And if the same content is being served on Alexa, right, there is a clear contextual meaning of that word over Alexa, right? So the context becomes very important, right? Also you would have to change the way that you are looking at the content from a testing point of view, right? Some greenfield test cases, right, where you say that, okay, you take a use case scenario and give that business problem to the user and let them ask questions to Alexa to understand, or to Google Home to understand if that's, if a user is actually able to get the information or not, right? So the way that you test your content or test your interfaces also becomes very different, right? Than your normal testing where you have a clear, defined acceptance criteria on which the user tested, right? Versus is the conversation legible, right? Is the conversation something that you can, is usable for the users? Then you have to look into VSO, right, which is voice search optimization. Voice search optimization is very different than your normal SEO, right? For example, I'll jump to this one. Right now, if you look at the Google point of view, Google, if you are in right now in the top 3, top 4, you still get a lot of traffic. But in the voice world, Google only treats featured snippets as the answer, as the default answer for that search query, right? Now that means that if you are not building your content, to come to a place where it is a featured snippet, then in the voice world, even if you are at the second place, you will not be good enough, right? Now that means you need to have listicles, you need to have proper H1s, H2s, right, in the place, proper titles in the place to come at the featured snippet, right? Going back, right, how it's different, it's voice search optimization, at least right now, from the data that Google gives, it's very search very real time, right? So if you are at a place, you want to find a pizza restaurant, right? Or it's if you want to find out best places in the New York or the concert in the places, right? It's very real time on what is happening with you right now. The data that Google gives, right? So these are some top voice searches happening, which Google is telling, right? Asking for directions, calling somebody, dictate text, get help with the homework, play a song. This get help with the homework is an interesting piece, right? Because while we don't see a lot of value in typing, because we see a lot of value in the typing because we are so used to it, and that's how we grew. The kids, which are actually growing up with Alexa and these devices in the world, they are very used to actually talk to these devices, right? Than we. So folks which are getting into the ecosystem now, old folks or the young generation, for them it's very natural. For us it's probably not, right? We get a little frustrated. So this is actually increasing a lot, right? To get help with the homework, check the time, find out movie times, and so on and so on. So these are the top searches according to Google, which is happening right now. Now what that means, and I'm going a little fast because I think I have like 20 minutes or something like that. Yeah. So just stop me whenever you want me to stop, right? So so how do you optimize, right? So find long tail keywords, right? Don't optimize your content for specific small keywords, but optimize for long tail keyword. More natural languages, right? And say that who, where, how, right? They become a very important part of that. There's your search optimization when you're doing the search optimization, because that is how people ask questions, right? So always think of when you're writing a content, how would you talk if you're talking that information? If you're taking that same information from a friend, right? Would you search? How would you search? What would you ask that question to your friend? And then think of the keywords, the long tail keywords around your content, right? Use more context, right? Metadata, markups, right? Schemas, That becomes very important for the voice search optimization. Optimize local pages, right? Have location data tagged in. This will become a big piece going on and on, right? So is your data, is the content that you are building, if there is some value in being a local, right? Is there a view of a local search happening around that data, right? Another important piece is the CTAs, right? If in the web world, we have a lot of different CTAs, a form, a click to button, call to action, blah, blah, blah. But in the voice world, imagine what is the CTA, right? If you remember that famous Google, that Google presentation that they did where he called that barber shop, right? I don't know if anybody has seen that video. But the call to action is primarily that phone number, right? Now, phone number is the most important CTA in the voice world, right? Right now, if, for example, you can right now say to Alexa or Google is call the nearest pizza place. That is actually a bona fide, right? It will call your nearest pizza place and connect you, and you can place your order, right? Now that becomes a very important CTA in the voice first world, right? So keep your right contact information handy with the local listings in the content that you're building. I talked about the Google search feature snippets already, right? And then there is some very obvious things from a search optimization point of view, right? So using triggers, thinking of the semantic words, using headings like H1, H2, using listicles, right? Here is said use conversational language, right? Like you're talking to a friend. It's important, right? Understand the customer intent and optimize the cadence, around that, right? So anything that you build for featured snippets, is a build for that, and it will automatically, will be applicable for the VSO as well, right? Another piece is that when you're building such content platforms and Drupal sites, always think that how so from a layout point of view, we always think how it would work on the web, right? Having the paragraph and the structure onto it. And I think Todd made a very good point about a couple of years back, which we have been working on some time now, and we are realizing as well, is that when you're building your content strategy, content layouts or content types, don't think of the visual web, right? If you do that, then you are stuck, right? And you cannot, if you are doing omnichannel, if you're going to present this on a watch or on a screen or on a digital display, right? It hinders the way that you have created the content strategy. So always think of a content strategy regardless of how the content would be presented in a format, right? And that is how any content strategy should be built. Multiple languages coming in, Arabic, Hindi, other languages. So get ready for it. So good. I went very fast. Any questions? And there's one architecture that we worked on. Architecture platform from a bot's point of view on how we are using it. I'll just talk quickly. So this is where we are working with a lot of unstructured data as well, right? Structured data is surveys, and building a pure knowledge repository, if you will, right? So there is a lot of knowledge repository, internal and external, in this case, for a consulting client that we are working with. And so we're taking a lot of unstructured data, structured data, putting it into our ETL process, right? We are saying that, okay, among the different classifiers that they have, right? What is the kind of a knowledge that they would want to, retain on, and what they want to discard in. Then using this classifiers, we are building essentially a knowledge platform, which is, helping them, build knowledge over a period of time, right? So an quick architecture diagram, which is getting the data, putting in a data lake, having an ETL process to essentially find out, different, data points from a classifiers, and then sending it to an API, which can then be consumed by different applications. So here it is. What else? Good. Somebody has a question.
Do you have any experience dealing with the different requirements of maybe the different language, chatbots or assistants like Google Assistant, as far as length for the content? So if somebody asks a question like tell me about 401ks, right?
Yeah.
You can give a one-sentence answer, or
Yeah.
you can give pages of answers.
Correct.
But presumably the different assistants will kind of choose different parts of the content, or somehow have filter it down to a more bite-sized piece. And is there also a way to then say, tell me more about that, or continue?
Yeah. So right now, see, the way that everybody is building the bots right now, right, or the voice or the chatbot is pretty much a card-based workflow, right, where you have clear path for the users when you're defining a path, and you want them to force the user. You want the users to be forced onto that path. That is one of the big reasons that why bots are failing as well in real user adoption, right? Because every development is happening on a very path-based workflow. What we have seen is working on is that where you do a little free-form based flow, right? You don't have a flow, so that means that there is no second step, okay? Which is pretty much free-form. If you do that, that means that you build a repository, of question and answers, right? And let user, ask that questions, right? Yes, it doesn't have the next step, but at least the user adoption is much better than having a card-based workflow where you have a step-by-step flow. The problem with the step-by-step workflow is that it works in the environment when you're building it or when you're testing it, and the business user it doesn't work with the real user adoptions.
Is there a hybrid approach where maybe in a more unstructured response you could kind of give some hints to the user about what to ask next?
You can, but I at least personally we haven't went that far yet, right? So one big piece is that once you're, and there are some examples. For example, in India there is a platform called Haptic, right, which has done that, where you have initial, big repository response, and then they build over to top of it, and technically there's not a problem, right? Yes, you have Alexa or both Google Dialogflow. They give you that options to essentially have different get the variables, understand the intent, get a response, and on the basis of the response you can fire another intent. So technically that's totally possible, right? The only piece is that don't start with that. Start with that repository, right, and then basis on how users are asking the next level of question, build onto it. From a functional point of view. Technically, not a problem. There is definitely you can have a response and then fire an intent on the basis of that response. Great. Awesome. Another question.
Yes. Schema.org has published a speakable specification.
Mm-hmm.
Does that fit into what you're talking about here? Can you speak on that?
Sure. I mean, I don't know about that one. Did they recently launch something like that?
Excuse me?
Did they recently launch something on?
Yes. It was,
okay, I am not aware of that. What I was more talking about, they had, for example, they have a listing. So if you're building a movies, listings, right? They essentially have a schema defined for it, right? If you're building let's say classifieds, right? They have a schema defined. So they have few categories where they have defined on how the content should be structured, right? So that the search engines understand that what this content is all about, right?
Sure.
Right. So that's the whole purpose of schema, and I'm sure that they would be, finding out new and new schemas, as they go along, and it would be becoming more. The challenge with historically, the challenge has been that it's not very used a lot in the websites, because people don't care so much that how Google is. They do care, but Google right now used to take on the data and get into the search results, and that's it, right? Now the context becomes much more important. Earlier it was a green field, right? Your page is indexed and it's coming on the Google. Somebody clicks and lands on the website. That's it. Doesn't matter, if what is the context of that particular page is so much, right? On the back end, yes, Google, by its own NLP engine, understands some context in some or the other way. But from a user point of view or from a presentation point of view, it doesn't matter, right? Now the presentation point of view, the context matters as well, because you have to be contextual for the customer, right? Even on the content that you're building, the context is not only for Google, the context is for the customer as well, or for the user as well, right? And that's where the importance of schema would now be a very useful thing. Earlier, historically, nobody cared about schema. Yes, that was there for I don't know how many years. People just didn't used to care.
Cool, thank you.
sorry, I didn't hear. What did schema.org release recently?
So, you know what schema is? Schema.org? So there is a, what do they call it? It's speakable spec. I think you can find it under /speakable. Yeah, and we've been implementing. I'm just wondering how this fits in, like DSO, SEO. I'm still trying to figure out what all this schema stuff is actually doing. Right? I know it's analytics. It's about analytics on the other side, not necessarily the presentation layer, but on the other side, like Google's collecting all of this data, and they're hopefully going to do with it. And what I'm sorry, is Srijan?
Yeah.
What Srijan just said is it sounds like it's going to become more important going forward. Like eventually they'll be used.
Yeah,
Eventually it'll improve your SEO.
Yeah.
Or VSO in this case.
Yeah. And I'm not sure about the speakable thing. I'll definitely check it out. Thank you for
Sure,
pointing it out.
It's not harsh. It's not a schema.
Yeah.
And
Only
I,
two types, the article and web page.
Yeah, but these are the two basic schemas, but then you have a lot more. If you go there, about nine different categories, right?
No, I mean in the speakable.
In the speakable piece. Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, sorry.
So I'm not too familiar with how to add this. So like what I understand about like the rich snippets or whatever they're calling the feature blocks on Google is you add like schema.org or somehow you add metadata to describe the content and they'll try to feature it if it makes sense in certain fields. Is that, you mentioned like the intent, I forget what you called them, or what they are called, but the sort of, I want to find a pizza place sort of functions and then the parameters, how does that fit within is that something that also gets added to as metadata?
So the ones, yeah, sure. So the ones that I just said that these pieces, right, they are essentially invoking functions or applications, if you will, in traditional sense, right? In Alexa world, it's called skills, right? Alexa skills. So it's invoking in Alexa skills right now, right, with this particular piece. Now this is unrelated to the web search, right? So right now, if you say, Alexa, give me a review, it doesn't work very well. In the Google world, it's other way around, right? There is less invocation of actions, which is skills in Alexa case. It's two different names. Oh my God! But in actions in Google case, but there more organic searches are happening. Organic questions are being asked. How is Spider-Man Far From Home review? Google will tell this is the review. What is the dollar rate today? To Indian rupees. It will convert and give back to you, right?
So if you wanted to connect to Amazon right now, you have to add your own stuff.
You have to create a skill, correct?
And publish it. And if you want to just interact with Google products, you can use the.
Yeah. So, but I think from a thumb rule point of view, the idea would be to stick with the good schema, to ensure that you have the H1, H2s in the right place. For example, one piece that we're trying to do is to do listicles, right? Google, usually if you're having a listicles in the content page, right, it actually takes you the feature snippet very well, right? Because it's a very 10 ways of, how do I, cure acne, right? Or how do I, get my better hair, right? There are 10 ways of getting better hair, something like that, right? So listicles actually work better on this. So the idea should not be worry about that, how Alexa right now does it. It doesn't, but stick with the good H1, H2s and listicles and the schema, and should be taken care of.
So it's a combination. Like, am I understanding that it's a combination of what's in the content, which is the headers, and then also calling out in schema.org like the location information, which can be wrapped within the content.
Correct.
But as metadata, so you're
Correct.
calling out that this is the phone number and this is the address.
Yes. Yes.
Or the geolocation.
Yes. Yeah. So schema.org does say that how should we define the meta value from a phone number point of view, ensure that that's in the place, right? So that it's being indexed in the right place, right way. Yeah.
As a website owner, is there any way to obtain any analytics, any data about the questions that are being asked of assistants, like Google Assistant, that are then pulling the information from the website?
Yeah, good question. Not right now, but Google is gonna, in the webmaster tool, they're gonna have one more section which is said, voice queries. They I think in one of the other blog posts or some webinar they said that they're gonna launch that. I haven't seen that yet, but eventually it will come in the next few
You know,
months.
we can't find anything either.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're hoping. I mean, they're collecting the data.
Yeah.
So,
But one-
It's not all them, they're-
Yeah. But having said that, if you have Ahref tool,
Sorry, what tool?
Ahref,
Yeah.
Ahref, that actually have. So if you go into any website, any even competitor data, right, you can actually look into the data and that have question queries, right? So it's not voice centric, but it says that okay, what are the question related queries that people are coming in. So very interesting data comes out of it, right? For example, for a manufacturing client, it had some very good long tail keywords which we never even imagined came out from that. We should check it out. I do that. I use that all the time.
Thank you.
is it?
Yeah.
So, I haven't used too much of the. Like, is there a way to preview the voice stuff to see how it's going to work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you're building the skill or the action, right, you can preview it out. Yes.
For Google search results as well.
Not search result as of now. Search result no, but that no way. Say that.
If you have an Android phone, you can trial it
Start
out. Ask
streaming
questions.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's something good to build, right? A module to essentially say that how it will work on the voice. Not bad.
Yeah, because for the snippets, you get there are preview tools. I don't know how active they are that will show you this.
Yeah.
But that doesn't exist for like, hey, get the. I guess you just have to assume if you say it's a phone number, it's going to know it goes for phone number.
Yeah. Awesome.
Right?
Great. Thank you.